quick kickoff here. Welcome everybody to the general meeting for ISC Squared Seattle chapter for the month of October. I guarantee you haven't seen me before. My name is Lori Murray. I am on the board. This is actually my first in-person meeting. So, all right. And that would be good.
Yes.
And be incremental. What? All right, click back on the slide.
Here you go.
All right.
That's your next slide, please.
All right. So the agenda right now, we're gonna go through some quick announcements for the pertaining to the chapter, and we'll jump into either discussion or a presentation, probably a discussion. So just a quick look at our sponsors. These are all, so this is also available online. We do appreciate all the sponsorship and the donations from each of the companies listed here. So chapter news, we're sad to see Mark. He has moved to Nashville, so he has left the board. So he acted as the board secretary. So we are sad to see him go, but we do wish him well on his next adventures.
Yeah, he's going to work for American Express.
Yep. So, and in lieu of this, Jake has been voted in as secretary. Congratulations, Jake. I'm not sure if he can talk, but he is online. So, and
Welcome.
backfilling Jake, we now have Ignis, who is in our front row here. She will be stepping in as director of communications. And since this transition happened officially last week, the slides are still in progress, so we'll have those filled out with details and goals coming next month. And the next several slides are the charter and all of us. I think we can skip through those.
Okay.
And this is who
Supposed to be here now.
we haven't seen him yet.
He may be here, we don't know.
So for tonight's session,
We're doing an impromptu session.
I have a text message that says I'm right around the corner. So he will be here, but we can take care of everything else we need to for the next moment.
okay, well then why don't we, before he gets here, let's take a quick break.
Yeah, and we can also mention that it's October is cybersecurity month.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of information out there available from NIST, CISO, and a bunch of different organizations that are available to you or your companies for free, right? You can be training yourselves. You can learn to do, you want your capture the flag, you want to have an all together big corporate rollout. There's so much information available now. It always shocks me when people say they can't find it. But if anybody needs that kind of information and can't find it, feel free to contact us. We will give you more than you ever need. But I agree with Lori, let's take a break. Let's help our presenters.
And let's move the camera to an angle that is easier to watch a speaker from. So
We just moved the TV.
I do need a plug.
But can we pull it up further?
Yeah.
Suggest.
Just drop that down.
That works.
And
You'll have to.
yeah. So everyone will set up the shot when the presenter gets here and gets ready, set up.
It is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but that is a little bit of a thing. That's to be the first slide. Next one, we'll go. Right, yeah, but.
Hello.
Hi.
How come you?
Good, for you.
Good.
Lee.
Do we?
Okay. Hi, Lori, nice to meet you. I'm Frank.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm Frank.
Oh, okay. Where's Frank today?
Oh,
Oh, man. That's a different time zone than everything.
yeah. You know, oh, sorry. Do you know how many people are online? I do not.
Oh, please,
Yeah.
yeah, drop.
Feel free, feel free. Okay.
Oh, 18.
Maybe a lot.
Here's my informal private meeting here for CPE.
Thank you all for your patience.
Does the stream usually increase the fall? This year, it's usually. It's only very, I know this.
Yeah.
Well, you bring was the average.
How's it going?
Good.
Doing well.
Almost 15 and I saved it and then, no.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't burn another 30 seconds.
Yeah.
No, we approved it.
I can't see this.
He's in Florida.
So, hi.
You have slides or anything, or do you? Okay, you want a little one?
There's, I really apologize.
You know, maybe-
I don't know, you went like 7:10.
Oh.
So. I'm fine. So,
I'm in April, but I actually started in April. And they have it in Europe every year, so this is international, they have an environment. So let me go stand for a speaker. It's IAPP. Association. Says IAPP.org. And the one people is. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
It's totally fine. I just. I feel
Nope, you're
terrible
good.
now.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay,
You're good.
so just this cable here.
Yes, if you want to, are you able to join the Zoom meeting and share your desktop?
Exactly. Because I'm recovering lawyer.
I thought everyone was done.
It's just dropping.
For the Zoom?
Yeah, you're the big guy. I know nothing. They trained you well.
Hey, Laura, can you hear me?
What's up, Steven?
Just to let you know, we can see your inbox. I don't know if you care about that or not.
Yeah, that's probably not the best. All right. Right.
So is this registration on? Or is it,
I'm not sure what. I can get some joints. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, very Recording in progress.
All right. And we're gonna have this.
Yeah, no, I told it, well, I mean, like, there's about.
Thursday night.
That's the camera.
Hey, Stephen,
Yes,
are we able to turn on screen sharing for the presenter?
If you make him a co-host.
I just made him a co-host.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're connected on LinkedIn.
All right. Yeah, so in that case, I am going to. Go.
No problem. Okay.
Oh, for some pizza.
Yeah.
Where do you, where do you,
Okay. Oh, wow.
write the things?
Been doing it.
Oh, okay. I guess it's like a search.
Oh, so you can tell me. Okay. Yeah. There's a startup and the private equity. Or credit cards. But
Can't take any credit.
It is. Great.
My name.
No, I started.
I'll go to the drug.
Yeah.
It's a CISO. I've done it a couple of times and then it's just. We get so much more creative. Pardon me, this word? Oh, yeah,
Strategy and direction, like
just in the us.
pretty well aligned and like, hey, starting this and be like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There we go.
All right.
Operate on one monitor.
We'll see, where's mine? We should. Are we close to 600? Almost double the last year.
When you guys will see this screen.
Yeah, there I am.
Good.
Oh, hey, hold on for just a minute.
And I have to speak early, so please don't think it's personal.
Yeah. What does she dislike about my? Yeah, no worries. I will, I have a pretty thick skin. And I was gonna start this off with, to everyone. And first of all, can everyone who's online, can you guys hear me and see me? And see my
Yep.
screen, which
Yep, you're good, Paul.
sure why it's not sharing
There's a lot
as
of
a
chat messages happening. to respond.
full screen.
If you click on chat.
Yeah,
See what they're saying.
well, I'm more interested in trying to get it to just show my presentation. Oh, I'm screen sharing all day long. I want to share just the presentation.
Yeah, I'm seeing only your presentation, Paul,
Usually a little view tab at the top.
from remote.
So online, all you guys see is the actual presentation. You don't see the Zoom meeting windows and things.
No, just all I'm seeing is your slideshow.
Okay, well, that's better than what we have here on the what you call it, but I think we can
How about,
live with.
Did you not drag that bar when videos out of the way?
yeah,
No, the other bar.
Uh,
Like
well,
if you drag it, that's off.
Yeah, I'm
Then you
trying.
can minimize it.
There you go. Yeah, but then I can't.
That's what they want.
Yeah, all right. Okay, that'll work for now. That looks pretty good there. Supposedly looks good online, so thank you. I apologize to those of you that have been waiting. I had a mix up on when I thought I was presenting, so my bad, my apologies. What I was saying there briefly is, if you're gonna walk out or if anyone drops off online, I will find you and I will finish the presentation. No, I'm kidding. No. So just take your medicine now and get it over with. No, what I was gonna say is I'm gonna start by saying that we have an echo. I'm just gonna assume that everyone here has been in IT so long that we're well past the audio-visual phase of this and we're just completely lost. Like I'm a professional, I swear. I'll get my kids next time. Yeah. What I was trying to say or was going to say and start off with is this is my take on things on a huge topic. It was difficult to get this down to something kind of manageable. I feel like literally every bullet point or every sentence could be its own presentation or its own book, as you guys probably all well know. So there's going to be spots where I gloss over things that are your most important part, or just, and you will find me and make me update my presentation. And that's totally fair. That's fair. And there'll be whole sections where I don't even mention it. And it'll be, somebody's, most important part or their pet peeve or whatever, or I'll go down some rabbit hole, which I'm going to try to minimize. So I just want to say that, hey, I won't be offended, leave, it's fine. But really, this is my take on, trying to be a little more practical without getting bogged down into the details, but also not getting into just kind of these, esoteric discussions around, security and security strategy and not just being fluffy, like, oh, go secure your environment. Well, yeah, duh, right? Like we know that. But by the same token, I don't have any idea, kind sir in the front there I'm pointing to. I have no clue what kind of infrastructure you're in charge of. You may not have any idea what infrastructure you're in charge of, which asset management, nothing personal, meaning asset management is one thing that I do touch on. But my point there is that, I could get into these hyper, finite details and it might work for one of you and that's it. So yeah, so try to get something in the sweet spot and hopefully it'll keep everyone entertained-ish and engaged a little bit. So with that said, of course, it's not going to let me click. Oh, there we go. Sure. Okay. My name is Paul Brunson. I work for a company called GuidePoint Security. For those of you that are in the room here, I work with Josh in the back corner there. He is my account executive. Probably some of you know him or have heard of him, and I guarantee he knows you. And yes, that is creepy. So Paul Brunson, I work with GuidePoint Security. I've been here for about 8 months now. And prior to that, I was on the customer side. I've never been on the dark side, the vendor and VAR and professional services and consultant side. And finally made that leap after about give or take 20 years or so in the IT security realm. My background or my previous employment was the last 3 or 3.5 years at Salesforce. Prior to that, I was at Microsoft, where I didn't work with Frank, but I worked with Frank, Simmer-J. And prior to that, I was at T-Mobile. And then prior to that, I was at AT&T Wireless, which is where I met Frank. Frank was our NFR, Network Flight Recorder rep, technical rep. And I was going to make a joke about his age and my age. and hair and lack of hair, but he's not here, so it's wasted. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I knew Frank back when he had hair, but not very much. Clear back in the AT&T wireless NFR days is when we met. Yeah.
Well, you said AT&T wireless.
I know, right? That tells you something. Yeah. Pre-singular, aborted attempt at getting T-Mobile, and yeah. So that's my background. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years or so. If anything, I think I have ideas on what not to do as opposed to what to do. But I do want this to be without, too much, I don't want to just lose control or just, put it all on you guys, but absolutely want to collaborate. Those of you online, I'll try to look at the chat window if I can do that, or just holler. I definitely want to. Oh, okay, excellent. I definitely want to, pause where it makes sense and kind of dig in a little deeper if someone's got some really good points that they want to make, or they've seen something that works or has worked, or if you just want to dig in on some questions. I think that's the slide that I was just talking to. Your mileage may vary. Hopefully these concepts apply without being necessarily bogged down into the specifics. Some of this will be incredibly remedial by the nature of what we're talking about, and by the fact that some of us have been doing this for a really long time. The last two bullet points there that I think get missed a lot is you have to understand your business and technology situation and what's going on. Of course, that's what we're talking about here, but you really need to understand the cultural and especially these days, the economic limitations, and not even necessarily limitations, the cultural and economic situation within your company, especially when you're thinking about strategy. If you have a company that does not want to adopt new technology, maybe it can't necessarily afford to purchase the latest and greatest, or for whatever reason is going to stick with what it has, your strategy should reflect that. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. If you're lucky enough to work for a Microsoft or an Amazon or whomever, and you got more money than you know what to do with, and that means that you can play with all the new shiny toys and get enough staff to do this, that's fantastic. If you're not one of those huge players, good luck hiring people these days, right? So it would be silly to make a strategy and just put a stick in the sand or a flag in the sand and say, well, by golly, that's it. Because if you start off knowing that it's going to be a failure or it's going to run into extreme challenges, why not just incorporate that into your strategy? I don't know if I specifically pinpoint it later on, but that's the kind of thing that you want to bring when you're getting that executive buy-in and executive sponsorship, is address those, especially in the strategy phase before you're supposed to be executing on things. Discuss the limitations around finances and staffing, and whether it's just the amount of staff or the qualifications and skill set. Everyone's migrating to the cloud. Not everyone has cloud engineers. So bring that stuff into your strategy and make sure that you reference it, especially down the road when you're building consensus and getting buy-in and approval from all the different stakeholders. And then last but not least, I have these in the order that mostly makes sense to me. I shuffled things around a number of times, but these steps are iterative. You can do them linearly, but then you'll go back and take something from this one and go back up to here and do a little there, and then take the combined output a little further down. So it's iterative, it's recursive, it's garbage, it's great, it's whatever you need it to be. So just take everything with a grain of salt. So, all right, this is our agenda. Is it all on there? Yeah, excellent. Doesn't necessarily look like cyber strategy, but I tried to find a way to make this at least hopefully a little bit interesting. It's a pretty dry topic here, so hopefully this will make some sense to you. So we're gonna start off with planes, trains, and automobiles. Did have a lot of fun finding some art online today that was cool and retro and vintage that work with what I'm trying to do here. But the point that I make here with the planes, trains, and automobiles is we're on a journey. it's cliche. I don't know if anyone's playing buzzword bingo out there, but this is a journey. This microcosm of developing a strategy, but also your journey of implementing it and over the course of your career. And you need to start with, are you taking a plane trip? Are you hopping on the plane and flying somewhere? Are you going to get on a boat, on a train, in a car? Is your company, what does your company do? What are you at your core? That's got to be one of the core elements that you take into account for your strategy. Again, if you're a Microsoft, an Amazon, a Google, or a Facebook, you're a huge software company. You're going to throw software at things and find ways to, 200 different ways to solve these problems. If you're a medium-sized garage door manufacturing company, you don't have a ton of, you don't have any developers, but you've got information and you've got assets that are, need to be protected, and your strategy needs to reflect that. So that's the planes, trains, and if we're on this journey, before you even know where you're going to go or how you're going to get there, you need to know what kind of vehicle you're going to use. Analogy there is your organization is your vehicle. Who are you and what does your organization, what does your company do? And that's going to help you really understand what's truly valuable to the company. Hardware is obviously, something that's generally speaking valuable across the board, but it may not be that valuable if you've got customer information or customer data or proprietary, patents and IP stored somewhere safe and secure. Setting aside the fact whether it's secure or not, if it's not resident in your data center or on-prem, then at least to some extent you can differentiate between those. So from a risk and a value and importance standpoint. So you might think, oh gosh, we've got all this hardware and all this stuff, might not be as important as something else if what your company does relies on that other thing, as the actual core value of the company. So what you do with that is the reason you kind of go through this exercise is it seems kind of obvious, but once you take a step back and think about it, you can actually identify areas of your business that might have been overlooked or neglected from a strategy perspective, and either maybe aren't protected as well as they should be, or as you'd like them to be, or it can help you when applying, deciding where to apply limited resources and where you will accept risk and where you won't accept risk down the road. So the ultimate thing you're doing there is, where does security need to be? Where do you want to be, in a perfect world, if you want to protect and enable your business? If you don't know what your business does, if you don't know what's truly valuable to your business, and if you don't know what your business is capable of doing from a security perspective, you're going to have a really hard time being successful. Any questions there on that? Yeah.
When you talked about trains, automobiles, and planes, I was interpreting it more as how quickly you want to get where it wants to go. Is this implied in this metaphor as well?
It is, I had not specifically thought of it that way, but I think that's absolutely something to take into account. I think with corporate culture in particular, and that could be just your manager's culture. Like, why isn't this done yesterday? It could be the necessities of a recent breach, where, you've got to, or some other regulatory or compliance, deadline that's driving it. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's, these were technologies in the past, just years and years and years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was there more? Okay. Yeah.
I talk about cars, safety belts and all that stuff.
Okay. So I see. Yeah, exactly. Like, you go back to a Model T, not very safe, couldn't go very fast. As cars get faster, you need to layer in the security, the safety stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And apologies with I don't have a way to actually present and see my speaker's notes. So I'm just going to have to kind of wing it here. So yeah, I think I was not specifically thinking along those lines, but I think that's a very important way, or another thing that you need to take into account is not only the speed, what's the business driver and the urgency and, things along those lines, which I think would be how much can I get how much time can I get myself? If I need to turn something around like an entire cybersecurity strategy in 2 weeks, that's, right? I've had similar requests from management before where you're like, that's a 2-year project and you asked me to get it done in a quarter, and that's silly. I think we've probably all had things like that. So I think it would be a very candid conversation with the stakeholders saying, we know that this company is not very agile or, doesn't move fast or, however you want to characterize it. Or maybe the company is agile and does move fast, but there are times when it shouldn't. If you're given a limited amount of time, you're only going to be able to go around to as many stakeholders as possible and incorporate that information. And that means that your strategy is not going to be reflective of the entire company's, needs and requirements.
Or you end up in a situation where you work for a company that moves fast and breaks things.
Move fast and break things, including democracy and whole nations at a time. And you end up with a lot of unintended consequences, right? Exactly. Yeah. So it's a really insightful way to think of it, though. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I'm kind of just thinking way. I'm like, put a little race car in there versus an old jalopy or something and talk about yeah. So we're on our journey here. We know what kind of car we have. We know what kind of vehicle we are. Maybe we're on a cruise ship. Hopefully it's not the Titanic, and we're not, gonna try to turn and avoid an iceberg. But whatever your company is, whatever your company does, you need to reflect that in your strategy. And then, of course, from there, you now say, okay, we're on a journey. Where are we starting from? We know the culture. We know what kind of vehicle we have. We know whether it's fast and sporty or slow and ungainly, but where are you starting from? And so this is the bon voyage. You're starting off on your journey, but where you might know where you want to go. You want to go to Valhalla. You want to go to Disneyland, or maybe it's Paris. I don't know, or Iceland or something like that. But how do you get there if you don't know where you are? And so the point here is the next step, once you've kind of understood the core of your business, is assessing your current state. And there are, this was an area where I spent, you could have 500 different slide presentations on this alone. So I will gloss over some of this stuff. Again, please chime in with questions or thoughts or anything. I think the most important part starting off on the assessment is I would highly recommend that you get a formal framework in place. Hopefully, there is a framework of some kind in place already within use somewhere within the organization, hopefully within the security organization. Again, it depends on your industry. It's getting harder and harder not to have some kind of regulatory body or compliance mandate that's telling us to do something. And those are, tied, either have their specific control framework of their own, or they're tied back to COVID or CSF or, ISO 27001, whatever the case may be. If you have one in place, to me, it just makes sense, assuming it's a decent one, to just keep using that. You've already got one group of people at least that are on board with it, hopefully have a little bit of expertise. You can leverage that as well for your assessment. If you don't have something, it would be very good time to pull something like that in. It's if there's a way to kind of forecast where your industry may be going and what framework is going to end up being applied to you, that would be great. If not, the ISO 27001 is probably the most robust and comprehensive and universally going to be the underlying framework for most other compliance programs. The cloud security framework is a really good one, but it's more about just having something so you can keep track of what's being assessed, have some way of measuring it, and validating kind of where you are in each of these areas, across all of the different security domains. Doing it just kind of on your own or your own ideas, I'm not smart enough to do that. I don't know if you are. Great.
I think it helps to build a routine and a cadence to a known. Specified frame, of you can reach out to other people, it's like, I'm following this one, you know?
Yeah.
Follow that one, so you build a
Yeah.
community and realize what works for them, what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and
Share and trade.
and you'll have a lot more resources available to you, whether those are resources you're going to hire to help with remediation, because they're going to say, okay, we're going to remediate against this standard, and that will be what they, what the vendors or contractors or even existing employees have worked against in the past. You'll be able to compare apples to apples from a capabilities and maturity perspective, even if the technologies aren't similar. So it makes
Same taxonomy.
yeah, exactly. And then that will also play a big part later on. A couple more slides here in the getting executive buy-in is being able to present this stuff in a quantifiable and another big bingo, but metrics and KPIs and OKRs. I don't go into that, just so you know, sit back down, everybody. But having a framework that you can compare it against, because you can also get that, where do industry peers stand? Where are they on this journey themselves? Executives love that kind of thing. I think we should executives get a lot of digs at like how we, red, yellow, green, everything's green, Tom, we're good to go. It's true to an extent. I think to be fair, executives do understand the larger picture at an industry and where things are going over large timeframes and where strategically your company needs to be placed. And so I think having something that is an industry standard is huge, and just going to make it so much easier for yourself. The second part is defining the scope. Are you looking at your entire security program, and does your security program as a whole cover the entire company? Do you have for instance, if I understand it correctly, they're not a customer of ours, so I'm not divulging anything from that I shouldn't, but Starbucks has their corporate IT security, and I think it's their corporate offices and their roasting facilities, but then they've got their entire retail org has its own security organization underneath it. I don't know how well they talk to each other or what that may look like, but they have, from what I understand, fundamentally two separate security organizations. So each of them in theory would have their own strategy, at least to some extent. So defining the scope of the assessment is not just which tool sets. It's, am I assessing security for the entire company? Am I assessing the strategy for, you're not so much assessing the strategy, you're stressing the capabilities and the current state of, but am I assessing that for just the security team? You may have whole teams with tools and technology that aren't explicitly security related. It's security related, but perhaps you have a team that's not in security that does patch management. Obviously that's security related, but maybe it's owned by a different team. So you're like, wow, that's not really our tool, but it's a huge part of your security tool set. And so do you have the mandate to assess their capabilities and their maturity level? If you don't, you might want to see if you can get that information, but you definitely need to be careful that you're not burning any bridges or painting a less favorable picture than some other people would maybe want you to have, presented to executives and so on and so forth. So defining that scope. Oh, go ahead.
We do have a couple.
Oh,
tips
yeah.
Here, and I just wanted to call attention to them on this framework, has frameworks for small
Yep.
manufacturing. Here's on for NIST CSF forever.
Yep.
CIS is a good place to start for small business and will.
Yeah.
Good share.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So the third one here, again, this really gets to the culture of your company. And I think you have to, if you're really honest with yourself, you have to try to make sure that you're not too blind to your own blind spots, if you can be blind to your blind spots, whatever that would mean. But the question there is, are you going to do this assessment internally? Are you going to just self-assess? Or are you going to bring in an outside resource? Now, I think ultimately if you do go with someone from the outside, it's going to end up being a bit of both. You're obviously going to be working very closely with them. But the point is that you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know what your blind spots are. That's why they're blind spots. And you don't know, or maybe you do know, who you can't really speak openly about or speak candidly about the state of their program or their capabilities or whatever the case may be, for various reasons, political and otherwise, without it. And it's a little easier for someone on the outside to come in and just say, hey, I'm just, don't shoot the, or even if you do shoot the messenger, metaphorically shoot the messenger. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I go home and that's not my boss that I got to see the next day. So if he's pissed off at me, I mean, I don't want him to be, but okay. You paid me to come in and do an assessment. That is also a strong reason to have a framework in place. Cause then it's not, hey, this is just the framework, it's not me. So, as you can tell, I've spent some time in some highly politicized environments. But I think that it's worst case scenario, you're in a highly politicized environment as well. We all have our favorite companies to pick on. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Best case scenario, I sound really cynical and jaded. And all that you can take away from that is it's not a bad idea to position everyone for success while being honest. And sometimes you have to have someone else be the bearer of bad news to keep everybody happy. That's going to be there for the long term. I'll leave it at that. I think you guys get the gist of it. But setting that aside, it really does come down to, are you capable, not only from a skill set perspective, do you have the skill, you personally, or someone in your team or someone within the organization, do you have the skill set to do a proper assessment? Do you have the time? If we could just call the hackers and attackers and say, hey, could you just take a break? We're gonna do a self-assessment. And that would be right. I mean, it's silly, but do you have the time? You have time now, or are you gonna have time a week and a half from now when there's a massive outage caused by a patch that now needs to be rolled back, or a breach, or possible? I mean, we all know the things, the security, it's just a nightmare at times. Yeah. So hurricanes, earthquakes, civil unrest, all sorts of things, right? Heat waves, yeah, exactly. And then, oops, time for a reorg. So, right. Yeah. So I think it's clear, and it's going to sound incredibly self-serving as someone that works for a vendor company. I genuinely don't mean it that way, but there's a lot of value to have an external party come in with the skill set, and they can avoid all those distractions and not get pulled into all those things that you inevitably will get pulled into. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I'm objective. I'm just comparing you against the framework, and here are the 1,700 bullet items we'd love you to pay us to help you fix. So last point there is asset management. Asset management and the lack thereof is my all-time favorite issue and problem. I got started at AT&T Wireless, like I said, sat down in front of an ArcSight console. Yes. Yeah, I'm old, and ArcSight was never any good, and it never get, but would pull an alert, dig into it, and inevitably no one ever knew whose asset was involved, and you could spend the rest of your life trying to run that down. Now, this is AT&T Wireless, going on almost 20 years ago. Things are better, but things also didn't get migrated into these hyperdynamic cloud workload environments where things are spinning up, spinning down, spinning up, spinning down. So I think the state of asset management has gotten better, but our environments have gotten a lot crazier. And so my point there with asset management is if you don't know what you have, and that's not necessarily server or workload infrastructure, that could be software repositories, that could be, IP or proprietary processes or procedures, that could be all sorts of stuff that we don't necessarily think of in the asset realm. And this does go back to understanding the core business of your business. If you don't know what you're supposed to be protecting, how are you going to protect it? So that's just my little note there on current capabilities and gaps. Is I would definitely spend a bunch of time, as much as prudent, in the asset management space. Because you've got a CMDB or you've got some kind of asset, but you're not using it, or it's only covering 60%, or you think 60% of your infrastructure, then, at a minimum, that, if there's a gap, there's something not being protected.
Did you say something earlier about blind spots?
Yeah, right. Known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. Yeah. If you find yourself talking like, was that Dick Cheney? No, that was Rumsfeld. You might have you might be time for a new career.
Can you talk a little bit about the themes that you've seen in terms of what companies are choosing or wanting to work on from the scope perspective? In terms of, in context of what we are talking about today?
I don't know if I have anything that I could pinpoint as like a theme across. It really comes down to it fundamentally comes down to the resources that the company has to throw at their security problems. So if you, again, I'm going to sound a lot like a broken record here. If you're a Microsoft, if you're a Salesforce, if you're an Apple or a Google, if you're one of the big, the FANGs or the whomevers, you have the resources to say, let's bite off a big old chunk and see what we can do. You're also a bigger target in many ways. And so you have to, compared to, maybe a mid-level, financial company or something. That's probably the worst example I could make, financial. Microsoft does not have the luxury of pretending that they don't have the world's biggest target on their back. They also have more resources than they know what to do with, so they can afford to have a massive, comprehensive, really 7 or 8 massive, comprehensive security programs across the board. If you're working for a small company with 250, how many Microsoft employees do we have here, by the way? Who am I going to get jumped? I'm walking back out to the car. Okay, yeah.
Think that at the core areas of what to do that would be what is my data security and how secure we are. So I'm just surprised that you were talking about how many people we have to throw at this. Really, the strategy is should be maybe, what can we do to be secure?
Yeah. Well, so I might have misunderstood your question.
Repeat the question.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. Can we repeat it do you guys hear the question at all online?
No.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead one more time.
The question was about, are there any themes, strategic themes that you are seeing in your practice? And then your response is that it's no, and mainly it's all about people. And my response to this answer is, I'm surprised that it's about people and not at the core for, hey, it should be about what's the strategy to security the data?
Well, and so do you mean is there a theme in the strategies that I see or the actual, okay. And I think I was talking about the theme of the scope and scale of various security programs. And I think you have some, so real quick, the question is, are there any themes or commonality that I've seen with companies developing their strategies that are kind of consistent or a theme across different companies in the strategy area? I kind of answered it in the incorrect way. I was thinking more about the actual security program versus the strategy, but we have a question in the back there.
I was just gonna comment,
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
Or theme that I see. I'm not.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's just reducing the threat surface.
Yeah.
Which in turn reduces the scope of your security program, and you can segment off your most sensitive environments, right? So that does reduce the scope in effect.
Yeah, and so understanding your question a lot better now, the theme is very much, where is our data? You know, fundamentally, it comes down to the information in the data, whether that's our own internal, that could be customer data. Usually it's a mix of both. And it is helping, you know, understanding where that is so that we can scope the size of everything down. Well, that is really one of the changes in the last few years is not just risk acceptance, but a wholesale, like that stuff over there, we're going to do the bare minimum. There's no customer information. There's no real risk. We've got it, you know, in a DMZ or we've done whatever we feel like is the correct level of due diligence to, you know, segment it off. And we can't boil the ocean. So we're going to focus on this. So it is really, yes, very much a data-centric approach, which kind of, and I'm going to change the way I talk about that. Because I think it's probably getting missed a little bit. Understanding the core of what's valuable to your business. I think I just need to make sure that that's kind of the thing that I'm talking about there. So.
I think maybe a good example, PCI compliance, right?
Yep.
Very restrictive, and it tells you if you segment off your cardholder data environment.
Yeah.
There's your scope.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no. And it's valid. I think for the longest time, it was this attempt to secure everything. Some of that was because network segmentation wasn't as mature as it could have and should have been.
Our site log everything.
Log everything. Yeah. And so, yes, that's a whole nother thing around. Well, I mean, there's an entire cottage, not even a cottage, whatever bigger than a cottage industry around log deduping and log minimization just to get it into Splunk or, you know, a logarithm or to someone else because the volume of logs. But, you know, 10 years ago, it was like, give me all of them. Give me 755 petabytes a millisecond if I can get it.
Some of the larger companies are very siloed. Many of them are, you know, this is my kingdom, you cannot touch, you cannot let it go away. And so by taking a data center apart, you're following that data throughout the company, saying, hey, this is what we have to protect. I don't care who owns it. We have to protect it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, another, you know, that's one of the core tenets of a, you know, zero trust, you know, zero trust model is there's data. It's going to go from wherever, and it, you know, it cannot be, nothing can trust anything else, you know, to be the right actor, human or otherwise, based off whether, but you know, your point around PCI is as much as PCI kind of gets dinged or talked down about because it is so easy to kind of just minimize that scope and just say, okay, we're PCI compliant and you are. That concept is not a bad concept, you know. If you took that and did that, you know, across multiple areas so that you ended up having, you know, multiple little fiefdoms or whatever you wanted to call them, and there was no trust model between those, and you said, well, this is our PCI place, here's our you know, our gov cloud, so it's got to have the whatever pips and you know, whatever, but yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You want to reduce that as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So. Was there something else there?
I was gonna say,
No, go ahead.
when you were saying, segment your CDE, this is the place that you have to watch 100%. You have to focus resources and pay for the resources to watch this at 100%, whereas everything out here could be a 10% or just make sure it stays up and stays active.
Yep.
Whereas you focus the resources on the money pot.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right, this one is as much because I wanted to get this picture in the presentation. I just thought that was great. Yeah, it's great, but we're on our journey now in my silly little slide deck here. We've gotten into apparently we're in a convertible Buick, maybe, I don't know. And not in a boat. And we're in well, gonna call that Rainier National Park. And the kids just really don't care. And mom and dad are upset because they've spent all this time and energy trying to make kids happy. How that kind of translates to what we're talking about here is you have understanding of your current state, who you are, where your data is, which data is important. You've used that to help you kind of understand the scope of your problem and scope of what needs to be protected and the scope of your security program, or at least the strategy, what's in scope for this strategy development piece. And so now what? Well, now you have to look at what that means from the attacker's perspective. What is that threat landscape? I said it a little bit ago. If you're a Microsoft, you have a giant target on your back. If for no other reason, then you have 90+% of the desktop surface area. So you're just gonna be targeted left, right, and center. Your source code is going to be tried to get, exploited. If you're a Facebook, you've got all sorts of people who hate you for various reasons, and all of the obvious examples and probably very legitimate. But not everyone works for these huge companies. And so really what this comes down to is the second bullet point there is follow the money. Short of a nation state actor, and I shouldn't downplay that in this current environment, but we'll set that aside for a moment. Luckily, most of us here in the United States are not the direct targets of nation state actors. Again, with a giant asterisk and a caveat there. Setting that aside for a minute, bad actors are trying to get rich. The criminal element, they're not doing this. The days of defacing pages and posting it all over and getting famous are long gone. You're going to go to jail for that, and no one wants to go to jail for this. And there are numerous, previously Eastern Bloc countries that are very, very welcoming if you want to do cyber criminal activities.
You're out of jurisdiction.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of the corollary to what is important to your company. What data is the core data that your company derives value from? What business processes? What is it that your company does at a fundamental level that is valuable to your company? That's what the attackers are going to look for. That's what they're going to be trying to encrypt and hold hostage, so that you pay them, $50 million in Bitcoin. So
That's cheap.
well, okay. I'm in the wrong line of work then, I guess. On the wrong side of this line of work. So yeah, try to, put yourself in that mindset. The framework will help immensely with this. Very, very often the frameworks come with information around obviously the attack types and the attack classes, but it's very, very simple to get even just the most recent type of vulnerabilities and attacks that are, relevant to these different control areas across the different domains and that kind of stuff. Getting an understanding of that stuff so that you can identify those gaps. You've got your current state. Now you need to know what you're moving towards and what you need to defend against. Is obviously the goal of what you're doing with your strategy. The third point there, your IT and business roadmap. You can do an amazing job protecting data, protecting infrastructure, protecting assets that the company is not even going to care about in 18 minutes, maybe, but 18 months. You can spend a tremendous amount of time developing a strategy, and it is for yesterday's environment, and everyone's migrating to the cloud. And that means things are spinning up faster than anyone knows what to do. And the developers were all told to move fast and break things. and spin it up and go, 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 go. And the security guys are playing catch up again. So if you don't take a lot of care and spend the appropriate amount of energy with key IT and business, and I mean business folks who might just say, I am the guy that needs help plugging his mouse in still. What's this IT stuff you're talking about? If you're not in at least getting a really good understanding of what they, oh yeah, no worries. If you don't have a really good understanding of what's important to them, you are not going to be doing what is important to the business. We're security people. We generally don't drive the business down, where the business wants to go. We are, by the very nature of our jobs, it's very reactionary and we're playing catch up. And if you're not out at least trying to, stay even with those guys, you're just getting even further behind. So that's the third piece that I would say is really, really important. Understanding. I have it under threat landscape. It's not a threat. It's a threat to the success of your security program if you don't keep up with the business. That shouldn't be a controversial, concept at all these days. I think.
Understand their forecast of their goals and targets.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of companies are like, hey, we're migrated cloud, and everyone did that for a year or two, and then the bill comes in from Amazon or Azure, and the brakes get put on that real quick because follow the money, because the accountants get involved, and all of a sudden the developers are put on lockdown, and you're like, and the security people can take a deep breath.
One thing I just observed themes.
Yeah.
If you work for a consumer facing business or facing part of a business, I think follow the money applies there too, because you can somewhat act not 100% as a cost center. You can introduce controllers that are customer facing that reduce friction in login, reduce friction in purchasing things. So obviously there's always balance, right? With security and usability, and making it as usable as possible by the consumers, because we're all here, but
Yeah.
is the business, right?
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Yep.
So we need revenue coming in, anything we can do to support that, and obviously benefit and promotes the security department all the way around.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That was one of the things, when I started saying I tried to, strike a balance between, really, really specific, this is the tool you need for 2FA versus kind of these higher level things. It's a little bit, and not that it's not a great point, but I think that would be certainly something that you would want to, from a strategy perspective, if you could find places where the security team as a whole can do things on customer facing products, Windows Hello and some of the stuff around identity and access management that is consumer facing, but has all of that backing and development and technology developed by security teams. That's fantastic. Because I mean, that's been the dream, right? Is you're like, hey, I'm not just a security, I'm a product team, Yeah.
And it was so surprising when I first saw that happen,
Mm-hmm.
that, stuff you were doing in the background was actually recognized by the company as a value add.
Yeah.
And, the customers were like, more.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the grand scheme of things, that's where we should all be trying to go as much as possible. I mean, the more we get the consumers out there, whether they know it or not, in a more secure, interface and more secure relationship with their products, with, our products, their products, and on their devices, the better it is for all of us. Right. So, yeah, I think that should be, and I don't think there's probably too many companies out there now that don't understand that, if they can, that's definitely the way to go, because why not? Right.
Culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tide raises all boats.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can incentivize it, whether the users know it, you incentivize it by streamlining it, or even just candidly, you incentivize it by making sure your customers know that this is a more secure way, to log into their bank on their mobile phone, with multi-factor auth or something. Did you? Oh, okay. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. What's that?
UBT is hard.
It's hard. if you lose things, it is. Yeah. So. And are we there yet? And again, this was as much so I could get that phrase in there. That's everyone's favorite road trip phrase, right? Are we there yet? The kids are happier in this picture, but they're different than the previous kids. So I think the family upgraded or something. Yeah. Parents are happy because they got rid of the kid, or maybe, I don't know. Yeah. And so this is, are we there yet? This is the quote unquote, no pun intended, the rubber meets the road. But this is where now, so you've gone and you have a really good understanding of who and what your company is, what those important drivers are within the company and the company culture. You have a solid grasp of your capabilities and your gaps and where you are. Now you've just gone through this exercise of looking at the threat landscape and determining, which areas are the biggest threat to you based off of the previous work, which areas you can, deprioritize or say, here is an entire attack vector or, class of attacks or type of attacks that we don't need to worry about just yet, or maybe not at all, because we've decided to just, outscope those assets, or, they're just out there. They're fine. We're just going to accept that risk and do some work to minimize any chance of breach from that avenue, whatever the case may be. You've done all that, but now you have to go and you have to get alignment and executive approval. You need to get the go ahead on all of this. The alignment piece is obviously already been touched on. This is something that you should be doing the entire way. That's almost just so obvious it doesn't even need to be said, but the whole point of going out and talking to all these different teams across your security org and across all the other organizations that are in scope is not only to get this information and put it into the Excel spreadsheet of the framework, but it's to get to know who these people are, understand who the key stakeholders are in their group, what their business drivers are, what their strategy is for the upcoming year. Because again, if you're going to say we need to do this and the business says, well, we're going this way instead, you're probably not going to be very successful. And so it behooves you to do all of that when you're working with these folks to get all that information. You can also, kind of the carrot and the stick kind of model is the carrot is, yes, thank you for this information. Maybe we're not painting the most beautiful picture of your group or your environment, but I want to bring that to our security leadership and executive leadership, not as a you're in trouble, but we know this needs to be fixed. Let me help them fix there. So now you're coming in as a partner for this person and you're bringing their concerns to executive leadership as well. If you've got good leadership, they're not looking for, to point fingers and blame people when, stuff's being proactively brought to them and they're being made aware that they want to address these issues. If you have leadership that wants to blame people really at any time, but especially in this phase of things, there's lots of jobs out there, everybody, lots of jobs. That would be a bad sign. So the first one I have there, speak their language. That gets back to the metrics and the OKRs and the PKIs or KPIs, or not PKI, but KPIs, all of the TLAs and stuff. And it's not even necessarily that, it's the business. Are you speaking in terms of the business? And again, like I said, this is iterative and it's recursive, and you go back and forth and you kind of lose track of where you are in this mishmash of this trip that we're on. But it really does get back again to what does the business care about? You're speaking to the CEO. He does not, unless you've got a really rare CEO, he does not really care whether you're using a YubiKey or whether you're using, he doesn't care. He just wants to know that people can't get phished as easily, or that their customers can't get, phished or exposed or whatever the case may be. He's not care about the technology. He wants to know what's being done, not how. And he wants to know what that business impact is. That business impact, like you were saying back there, is we're making it faster, simpler. They never have to remember their password. If you could find some, passwordless way of doing it, and it's more secure. So the customers are going to love it. And the CEO's like, yeah, that's all customers are going to love it. And my CSO was telling me that it's more secure. So great, right? So we are probably in an area where we have CEOs who do actually understand this stuff more than a lot of other places in the world, and do care. But that's an anomaly to a certain extent in the tech, the massive tech center that we're in here and on the West Coast. So obviously, your CEO or your VP of this and VP of that better than I do. Some of them will tear you to shreds on the technical details. So, this is definitely an area where you can take what I'm saying and chuck it out the window. Nothing worse than going in and having some VP who really is smarter than everyone in the room ask you a tough question and you're like, that's the worst. But again, answer those technical questions if you need to, have that information available, but you definitely have to have it from a business perspective. You do need to talk about what that's going to do to the business, how it's going to enable the business, if you can enable it, or at a minimum, how you're going to protect the important data and the valuable assets that the company has. And then, of course, tying it to that IT and business strategy. You've probably got the CTO and or the CIO and the CFO or the VP of finance. If you show to them that you are incorporating their roadmap, like, hey, I see that we're making this huge investment with GCP. We've did a bunch with Amazon or maybe Azure, and we want to diversify. So the next 18 months, we're dedicated to spend, 200 million with Google, and we're gonna whatever, right? If you know that, he's not only going to say, okay, this guy understands what our business is doing and he's paying attention to what we're doing, but you're going to find out one way or the other. It's always better if it sounds like you are proactively aware and accounting for that, as opposed to like, oh yeah, we did some cloud stuff and we got to do some, speak to the specifics. Worst case scenario, or worse, or maybe best case, you're stroking the guy's ego, the person's ego. Unfortunately, it's probably a man in the C-level office. That's terrible. That person's ego, and that's never a bad thing. But the real value is you do know what the business is doing and you're projecting forward so that the security program is not always playing catch up. And then the last thing is, don't be afraid to dream and get excited and remember how cool security can be. You and I could never start drinking together. We're just going to spiral into oblivion on the cynicism. But there's some really, really cool stuff. If you can come up with a solution that is a whole new product or product category or a product feature that makes it better for your users and makes it more secure. If you can come up with some cool blockchain idea that actually requires blockchain for some reason, and it is really cool, how exciting would that be? How exciting would it be to work on a product that became, the next big, I don't mean next big, necessarily big thing like, oh, you're in a startup, but I mean, just this cool thing. Don't be afraid to remember that. Don't be afraid to get that into your strategy to keep the people around you, your peer teams and stuff involved and engaged, but also in those executive meetings. You want, they're people, they're human. They want to be excited about stuff. They want to see people that are excited to come and do their work. And they know that not everybody is there to build a product for their customers. Your CSO, he knows, obviously, he wants to see people who are excited. All of my cynicism aside and grumbling about, all the stuff I've been grumbling about here or whatever, it's not the best way to necessarily present in executive meetings. It's really, really hard as a security guy to not just come in there and the sky is falling. We've been telling you for 5 years. It's all true. Like, I mean, we can be honest here. It is. It's terrible. But nobody wants to hear that, right? And so, right? I mean, you really don't. So, find a way to talk about it in terms, even if it's just the business, the language of the business, empowering users, streamlining, synergizing, whatever. Or if you can be authentically excited about something and just talk about how cool it would be to do this and this and this. You know, you're looking at the CFO and you say, man, it would be really awesome if we could, you know, segment things off. And then this whole stuff is not even in scope. So the security program doesn't even need to be this big. CFO is going to be super excited about that. You know, if it helps with his PCI compliance, he's going to be even more excited about it, right? Yeah, exactly. You know, if you're talking to, you know, director of product or ops or engineering, and you can talk about how zero trust model means that people can't get in and push changes when they're not supposed to, you know, so you're not going to have outages, you know, without, you're hopefully going to reduce the likelihood of an outage. Thank you for the snarky little smirk there. Keeping me honest. Certainly don't go in and promise things that you can't do. But the point is, if you can build security measures into the development life cycle, and I don't mean just SDL and secure code, but look, your developers cannot get into the production environment and break things because they thought they could just get something in real quick. You know, you're showing the vision for that. You're showing an understanding of the business. You're showing something that is really specifically interesting to a person based off of their role. And again, that's all the way down to the developer who wants to get in and do something. You're like, I'm saving you from a career limiting maneuver. You're going to do something really, really stupid someday after 6 beers. No, seriously.
That's happened.
I'm trying to remember the massive DNS outage that Microsoft had in 2012. I was in the office next door when a person went in and made a change in production, and it brought down Azure. And that was his last day at the job. And it was after some beers, and it was just, I got to get this in. And it was like, man, I wish that there would have been a mechanism in place to stop you from doing that, because I really liked the guy. So anyhow, you know, I wanted to end on a more positive note. Just in time, exactly, just in time access, and you know, someone having to click approve on it is you know, better than someone clicking approve on the termination file in HR, right? I think, I don't know, right? He doesn't want to click to the next slide. Yeah, I'm a Windows guy forever until this job, and they gave me a Mac. I'm like,
Actually, then it was innocent.
no, this was, well, it might have been all of it. There we go. Q&A. That's the last slide. I don't know if we have anything specific. Thanks everyone for yeah. Anyone online? They haven't like off themselves yet after listening to me drone on and on. So, well, thanks. This was great. This was fun, guys.
Thank you very much for presenting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Great information.
Thank you. I guess I will end with kind of what I said at the beginning is we go on and on and on about this. Not that I necessarily know anything more, but you know, I'll go have a few beers and just chat about this kind of thing. I love doing it. I guess I'll take 5 seconds so that my sales guy, Josh, doesn't smack me when I walk out. He's like, I felt a tremor in the force. You didn't try to sell anything, but GuidePoint Security, we'd love to help you with this, but you know, what's that?
How do we get in touch with you?
I'm right here in front of you. Let's chat. So my name is and email are in this presentation. I'm going to clean it up a little bit and do a couple things. I got to make some annotations, whatever, but I'll find a way to get it out to everybody. And it has my email address and stuff, but guidepointsecurity.com. I suppose I should have done this at the very beginning. We're brand new in the region, been around nationwide for about 10 years now. VAR, vendor, reseller, professional services, you name it.
Anything you specialize in?